With the release of Wastelanders, Bethesda took advantage of two of their biggest missed opportunities with the release of Fallout 76, actually adding dialogue choices and human NPCs as content in that game. They just tried numerous times how they plan to stick with this game, have a lot of plans for the future, and even just a couple of months ago we got the full Year 2 roadmap. Although despite all of that, I find myself consistently asking or just wondering about the what ifs of this game. The direction it's heading is fine. There's a lot of good content being added to this, a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, some other stuff that isn't my favorite, but I understand it. Nothing on the roadmap really strikes me as being a particularly bad new addition, but there are several things that I just find to be odd that they've never been implemented. Several pretty major missed opportunities that in my eyes are continuing to exist with Fallout 76, even in light of this new roadmap. Off the bat, Bethesda just got many things wrong, things like the PvP focus they thought this game would have, or even the storytelling style. But fortunately, they fixed that. And in this video, I want to mention some other things that I think still need to be fixed, or just things they should be taking advantage of. If you guys do enjoy the content, you can get subscribed. There's going to be a little bit more Fallout 76 stuff as we get our new update tomorrow, if you're watching this when it comes out. And even apparently a new trailer is coming around that Year 2 content tomorrow, or at least some new gameplay. One of the first things I view as a pretty substantial missed opportunity with this game is one of their original ideas, which was using players as the drama in the game, or using players as content. If you don't know, that was Bethesda's original justification for not adding in human NPCs. They wanted to make it so when you saw another human, you got nervous because it was another player and you didn't know how they would react to you. Of course, using the players as content makes a lot of sense in a multiplayer Fallout game, which makes it all the more baffling that they haven't allowed players to create quests. It's one of those features that just seems like it would fit in really well. Let's say there was a hypothetical quest board you can place down at your camp. And on this quest board, you could do things like, hey, if you go to this location and loot these items, you'll get this as a reward. You could assign caps, you could assign some rare items. There's such an overinflation with Fallout 76. People have thousands of caps and too many rare weapons that I think it'd just be a fun thing for players to do, whether they're focusing or targeting newer players or lower levels or even higher tier players. I know for one, if I saw something that was a pretty good weapon or even a good amount of caps that a player was offering for something I thought I could accomplish with a couple of hours of work, I would probably do that. Shop around on servers similar to how you could shop around at player shops. But another big one, at least in my eyes, is PvP. This has had a lot of discussion as of late with Fallout 76 because Bethesda is removing some more PvP features. PvP in the game right now has a very niche community. And I think one of the big reasons PvP has a niche community is it's just handled horribly. I love PvPing. I play a lot of PvP games myself, and I get very invested. I want to know the best strategies. I want to be good, be better than those other players. But in Fallout 76, one of the games I play the most, I just don't really care. Because to be frank, right now, PvP kind of sucks. One of the big ones is around, I think, the Battle Royale mode. I have a plethora of criticisms of the mode itself, and its implementation and its lack of support, but that's not even the point I want to make here. Just in the fact from a conceptual level that they implemented one of the most costly PvP modes. Obviously Fallout, a single player franchise before this game, didn't have a big PvP audience. And now you add in a mode where one death is the end and you lose all progress. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I think something more like a Base Wars mode would be a far bigger hit and just a lot more fun. You can incorporate things like player builds and perk cards, so you do have different classes in a way, but a more fluid class system. Somebody who could have several healer perk cards or more offensive perk cards. With Base Wars, you have a building phase, so you're going to use that camp mechanic. People building together. You could even have a capture the flag-esque mode where you have to build defenses and try and keep other players out. And even you could naturally implement it into the game right now, just put it at one of those existing workshop locations. Give me a 10 versus 10 mode where you could actually respawn. And I bet a lot more players would be interested or invested in something like that. Or even one concept they actually almost implemented, that with survival seasons. Bethesda implemented survival mode, then kind of nerfed many of the aspects into the ground, then just removed it. But at one point, Todd Howard mentioned how they had this idea for a season system with the mode, where each season, let's say it was a couple of months, they would change up the game rules. And I think that has a lot of merit or potential. Make it so sometimes there's just no legendaries, or other times it requires a new character to play. And even via this, like many of those early leaks say, I think an actual Rust clone for Fallout 76 could work really well. Take away legendary so there's no one-shot killing and you don't have to spend as much time getting a top tier build or even just a build that makes you relevant. But I bet a lot of people would love to run around with a actual survival element as a separate mode where they're not going to lose all that stuff they worked for in adventure. But they probably wouldn't mind losing some of the stuff they worked towards in the survival mode, especially if they knew that risk was always there. There are a lot of avenues they can go with this one. It's just really shocking to me that Bethesda hasn't tried many. Their decisions around PvP in general have just been odd and bizarre. Alright, so this one may get some people to raise their eyebrows, but I think Fallout 76 should get Creation Club. I know right off the bat people are like, no, Creation Club bad, but Creation Club has done some good things for the community. One of the biggest ones is it gives mod authors an avenue to get paid. Mod authors who have spent thousands of hours creating free content for us to download are now getting paychecks from Bethesda. And I think more of that could actually be really good for Fallout 76. So now, of course, with Creation Club for Fallout 76, I don't mean actual new content like we have from Fallout 4. I just mean applying it to the Atomic Shop. You see a bunch of skins for power armors, weapons, etc. that are all available. Instead of having just a random Bethesda employee do it, contract it out to some of those prominent community members that have been doing this for free for years, especially in a multiplayer game. I think something like this could work really well in that those creations would have a personal component to them, and it does feel like you are supporting creators more directly, not Bethesda, the big evil company, but an actual person. And from this, I feel like there are very obvious benefits on both sides of the coin. Actual community involvement with the Atomic Shop right now, there's a lot of people who want to spend their atoms and there just isn't a ton of cool content getting added. Give some of those mod authors a try and see what they could do. But then even for Bethesda, as again, it likely would see an increase in sales due to that personal touch. And just to clarify some things around this, I'm adding this after the fact. For some people that don't know how Creation Club works, basically Bethesda pays mod authors a flat fee in cycles. So as they're developing a certain mod for Fallout 4, you get installments of payments after you hit certain milestones. Now when it goes up on the store, mod authors don't get a cut, it's Bethesda kind of taking on all of the risk. And just overall thus far, the program for Fallout 4 and Skyrim has been very, very popular. I've seen some people try and report they only get they get more than a couple $100, and many people who are in it are very happy. So I just wanted to add this at the end to clarify that yes, this is truly benefiting those involved. Okay, so this next one is a big one that I've been saying basically since the game came out, and I'm still shocked hasn't happened, but world-changing events. Many other MMOs do things like this, and you could even incorporate factions. But it just is shocking to me that in Fallout 76, there's never actually been a time where we could have an impact on the world as a community collectively. And it honestly would be quite easy for Bethesda. So the hypothetical I've given around this in the past is, let's say there is an in-game event. You could either be on the Enclave team or the Brotherhood of Steel team. You have to pick at one point which side to align with, and with that, as you kill, let's say, Scorched or some other in-game activity, you earn points for your team, and Bethesda tallies which team gets more points. The team that ends up getting more points gets a cool new shop. Or let's say this miscellaneous location, after the event ends and a team wins, will now be identified as one team or the other. I could even give the winning team a free cosmetic, like a player icon or a weapon skin, so they could show to their friends, hey, look, I actually played a part in this. Fallout is a franchise where there are a lot of players who have very strong connections to one faction. I mean, many Fallout community discords already do this, where you can identify with one faction or another. The fact that Bethesda in no way, shape, or form has ever taken advantage of that in this game is just weird. Or even something a bit similar. Right off the bat, the whole premise of this game coming out of Vault 76 was to help rebuild the world. What if there was a community event where the players have to do something and then some part of the world is actually rebuilt? A popular request has always been making the White Springs bunker / hotel into a community hub. I think it'd be pretty cool if Bethesda incorporated a little event at that area, and then depending on how many times the community completed it, there would be new or different new additions at the White Springs bunker, kind of like stretch goals. And at the end of the event, you would see an overhauled location that you actually had an impact on. I imagine this would make the players feel way more connected, enhance that sense of community while also incorporating world-changing events like past Fallouts had, such as nuking the Institute. Another pretty big one in my eyes is around duping and the weapon and armor level cap. It's just kind of crazy now, even 1.5 years later, duping remains a major issue in Fallout 76, and Bethesda has yet to implement a more permanent solution for that problem. Thus far, Bethesda's fix for duping 99% of the time is to just ban the person who has been duping. If you have over X items on your account, we are permabanning you or temp banning you. And sometimes on those banned accounts, the items even get removed, but also a lot of times they don't get removed. The problem with that is many people know this, so what they'll do is dupe a bunch of items on one account, trade in smaller quantities those items to other mule accounts, and then when the first account gets banned, they still have all their items, it's just on other accounts. In particular when duping weapons, which is the single most popular form. Bethesda has really just not deleted some of those duped weapons. There's one point where they kinda did it a little over a year ago, but literally one instance. That's kinda crazy considering how big of a problem this is. But fortunately, Bethesda has an easy out. Create some kind of software that allows you to better track this, to better fix this once a dupe has occurred, because it's clear now after a year and a half, they do not have the ability to stop duping overall. They fix the problems after they pop up, they ban some of the players, but that clearly isn't a permanent fix. It hasn't been working. So let's say they had a way to actually track weapons when they were duped, and a way to remove them from the game after they were duped. That would be huge. Obviously not easy, but this is clearly, again, a problem that's not going away. And then, very simple, raise the level cap. Right now in Fallout 76, basically all of the weapons and armors have a level cap of either 45 or 50. It's been that way since launch. If Bethesda implemented a more permanent solution with duping, they could just very simply make it so now weapons could spawn up to level 70, and immediately all of those duped items would be second tier to the higher level alternatives. So if you really wanted the top tier loot, you would have to get it legitimately, not via exploits. And actually a great time to release this would be with one Appalachia, which is their other comprehensive rebalance of the game. One of the other big ones that is just kind of crazy is even though Bethesda has a multiplayer Fallout, they got the multiplayer aspect where you could play with other people somewhat working. It's like they forgot all of the other fundamental features of a multiplayer game, those social features that almost every other one has. So adding in some or even all of those would be a pretty good step. Text chat, because yeah, every other game has that. That's on PC. On consoles, it's not as big of a deal because you could send messages. On PC, it's really annoying. A way to actually trade items for one another, like bartering. Fallout 76 is a game where bartering is a fundamental concept and fundamental practice in the in-game economy, except there is literally no way to actually barter. Technically, all of the ways you trade items in Fallout 76 are using currency, caps. But let's say, hey, I have this cool weapon, I want to trade it for that cool weapon you have. There's no way to safely do that. If I want to trade you my gun, one of us has to go first, and we have to kind of cross our fingers that the other person is going to hold up their end of the deal, again, assuming you're not using caps, which is a pretty popular thing. As I described some of that inflation earlier, a lot of people like item trades more so than caps these days. The fact that this still isn't a feature is just insane. They have the trade interface, just make it so you could put up one weapon for another, or you could request one weapon and then you'll sell them your weapon if they do fulfill that request. A working social menu is another big one. Like on my social menu right now, I have 100+ friend requests, but I just can't see them. I have to manually type in people's names even though they sent me a request because it's just bugged, and it's been bugged for months. Even further, this is a game where if you have too many friends, your game will lag and stutter. And as far as I'm aware, that wasn't always there. There was actually an update or a change to the game that implemented this problem. That was almost a year ago and it just hasn't been fixed. The ability to actually connect camps and build together. Again, we have a game that's really focused on building, rebuilding the world, but you can't actually create cities. You can create your little camp and your friend could create his little camp over there, but you can't put them together. And that even despite the fact that you could have several of these camps in very close proximity. And even lastly, with legendaries being such a huge part of this game and its economy, making it so if I'm doing an event that I might specifically be doing because I know a legendary will spawn, I'm not going to miss that legendary just because somebody else one-shots it. This happens somewhat frequently where, let's say there are 5 people doing an event, the legendary spawns, and many of these have fixed spawns, so you'll know it'll either be 1, 2, 3. Somebody's using their god tier weapon, accidentally kills it, not realizing it was the legendary, and now he's the only one that'll get the loot. It's really frustrating, really annoying, and it just should be fixed by now. Now, fortunately, we are getting public teams, which is a good, healthy addition as far as social features go, but I feel like all of these other features will almost be a better implementation than public teams, or at least more well received by the community. A fairly simple one that they likely will do at some point, and perhaps even with this expeditions feature coming later down the line, but return to Washington DC in a major DLC. For many people, Fallout 3 was literally their introduction to the franchise. games. And being able to revisit that and revisit it in a different time would be huge and a massive hit. But in a similar vein, I'm really surprised, despite Fallout 76 taking place just 25 years, now 26 years with Wastelanders, after the bombs dropped, that we have yet to see any ancestors or kind of early NPC group. We know of a ton of other NPCs in the area. The people that appeared in Fallout 3, the people that appeared in Fallout 4. It seems like an easy nod or even just an easy implementation to add in some older version of a faction or a character, like somebody's great-great-grandfather, into Fallout 76 as a human NPC. This isn't necessarily a huge issue with the game as much as it's just weird they haven't done it. They did it several times between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, so why not do it on a more extreme level or even a more in-depth level with 76 in one of those other games? Technically, Kent Connolly is mentioned in a terminal entry, but that's it. Another one that's crazy to me that they have yet to implement, especially because it would be such a problem solver. Right now in Fallout 76, the endgame grind around the factions is frustrating. A lot of people don't enjoy the mini quests you have to do because they're just tedious and not very interesting. You also have these two big new faction bases that are newly added in. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if there was an event that awarded you faction reputation that actually involved the two new factions, perhaps even at their bases? Or if you don't want to do that, you could just make it some other point on the map. With Wastelanders, two new events were added. One is actually faction focused, but it's one of the newly added factions. But the two biggest factions in the game right now don't have any events associated with them, which is just perplexing. Especially considering if you are an active player of Fallout 76, doing events does consume a lot of your time. I feel like with these new factions, they should have a couple of events each. Make it so if you nuke their base or nuke something around them, there is a cool boss level event like the Queen. Except on this one, you have the Raiders or the Settlers helping you out in the fight, and by completing it, you could get your faction reputation daily required amount. And then last but not least, one that we almost got that seemingly Bethesda was planning to add: crossplay. This is a weird one where basically Bethesda seemed like they wanted to add crossplay to Fallout 76 specifically between the consoles, but then Sony was not working with them. But then Sony allowed a bunch of other games to do crossplay, and now it seemingly would be fine. In particular, when you consider that now Bethesda has a larger partnership with Sony, having two new console exclusives. Adding crossplay would be a big deal. I think a lot of people would really love that. It'd be cool if it was all three systems like many games have started to do, especially considering right now Fallout 76 doesn't have a very big PvP scene. If anything, just make it so the adventure mode is crossplay, but only the adventure mode. But at the very least, just make it between consoles. I could see some console players not wanting to be connected to the PC world because the PC worlds have a lot more hacks, hacked in items, some other issues, but perhaps we'll maybe end up getting it. I have a feeling we may not see crossplay because the devs and the studio just don't have enough manpower for it. Before release, Fallout 76 got a lot more attention from Bethesda game studios overall, but now after release it doesn't get quite as much attention, so perhaps it's just viewed as too much work for not enough of a reward.